The state of NASCAR gaming is honestly depressing to look at nowadays. The last entry that NASCAR fans consider to be a truly great experience where everything all clicked and fit perfectly together was NASCAR Thunder 2004, and that game came out in 2003. Since then, there was a slow but gradual slip with 2005 Chase for the Cup, 06 Total Team Control, and 07, a fall with NASCAR 08 and 09, a rise to mediocrity with the Eutechnyx titles, another fall with NASCAR Heat Evolution and rise to mediocrity with the following Heat games, all by Monster Games, and now here we are with arguably the steepest fall yet with NASCAR 21 Ignition developed by Motorsport Games. It has been almost 20 years since NASCAR gaming has returned to greatness. This is the third time that NASCAR gaming has relapsed into this cycle of there being a terrible game and then multiple games after that may improve but are still mediocre compared to what players were getting in the early to mid 2000s. And unfortunately, history is shaping up to be repeating itself once again with the latest entry that Motorsport Games has released. Let me provide some background regarding my relationship with NASCAR gaming real quick. Having been born in 2001, I was a kid growing up during the golden age of NASCAR gaming. Racing games in general were the main type of games that I played growing up, which, duh, I was a kid. Yeah, my parents got me introduced to Call of Duty and Battlefield much earlier than they should have looking back on it, but that's a case with a lot of us, I feel, and look at me now. I'm still holding up alright. But before then, racing games and any action games that weren't bloody were what I played, or rather, were what I was allowed to play. Out of all the racing games that I played though, the NASCAR gaming series was my bread and butter for a good long while. I was a big NASCAR fan growing up as a kid, to the point where if you asked 4th or 5th grade me to list the entire driver roster for that year, I could do it easily. I played and loved the early to mid 2000s entries growing up. I wouldn't realize it then, but I had it made in the shade back then. That was as good as it was going to get for me in regard to NASCAR gaming. As I grew older and as Eutechnyx became the new publisher for the NASCAR games, I stuck around for a while longer. I actually have some pretty positive memories of NASCAR the Game 2011 in particular, even though many people say that entry was bad. But after NASCAR 14, my interest in the motorsport as a whole died down to where I didn't play the games anymore, and after a while longer, I stopped caring about the sport itself eventually. I would watch from the sidelines as the NASCAR Heat series would return, skipping Evolution for pretty obvious reasons, and then I wound up buying NASCAR Heat 2. I played Heat 2 for a little bit, and then shelved it and went back to watching from the sidelines until NASCAR Heat 5. At this point, the Heat series wasn't anything like Thunder 2004, but it was in a pretty stable condition. I would even say that Heat 5 was close to being a truly great game, with improvements in the presentation being the main thing I saw that was holding it back. But rather than improve from Heat 5, here we are today with the disaster that is NASCAR 21 Ignition, and the most recent title that I'll be reviewing today, NASCAR Rivals. Developed by, and I'm not going to beat around the bush when saying this, the incompetent people over at Motorsport Games, the best way that I can describe NASCAR Rivals is with the old saying from Jean-Baptiste Alphonse Carr, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Granted, the change from Ignition to Rivals is a staggering one, but with Rivals, Motorsport Games more so hit the go back button rather than changing things up. Aside from the visual differences between the different menus and displays, Rivals feels more like an expansion that's packaged as a full game. Now, for the record, I managed to grab a physical copy of Rivals during last year's Cyber Monday sales on Amazon for 50% off, so $25. And it's a good thing I did, because I'm going to say this right now, Rivals has a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of small presentation things that add up fast, and a general copy-paste feel to it that makes it a hard sell for not just anyone who has played games like Heat 5, but a hard sell in general. Graphically speaking, Rivals isn't able to match what Ignition and the Heat games are able to achieve because of the platform that it's on, that being the Nintendo Switch. This game being on the Switch and therefore the graphics not being as impressive to look at isn't an issue for me personally. And I'll even admit that it's pretty cool to be able to pull out the Switch to play a NASCAR game on the go. Yeah, it can definitely be annoying to see lines constantly popping in and out and trailing you as you make your way around the track, and seeing large signs in the distance experience poppin', and having to put up with this game running at only 30 frames a second, which, as someone who is a frame rate over graphics guy, it does grind my gears a little, but overall, the game still plays and runs well for the system that it's on. On the audio front, this is where Rivals runs into a few hiccups. The sound of your car itself racing around the track is fine, and it never got annoying to hear the revving and whining of the engine, but there's a noticeable lack of audio from the other cars around you at some tracks.
Clear out back. Stay low.
It's almost as if on some tracks, your car is the only one making any sound, while the others have engines installed that are totally silent somehow. There's also noticeable inconsistencies when it comes to the crowd. Sometimes when you pass by the crowd, the audio clip of their cheering plays just fine. And then other times when you pass them, thankfully, the other aspects of this game's audio are all good. Your crew chief and spotter are both easy to hear. Your spotter isn't trying to give you the Wi-Fi password when you go 3 wide with other drivers.
323232. Just shut the f.
And the pre-race commentary sounds good as well, to name some other points. Content-wise, the main draw for this game is its career mode that is the exact same career mode as NASCAR Heat 5, except now you can only race in the main series. No dirt, no trucks, no Xfinity, just the Cup Series. You start off by creating your driver, which I will admit, credit where it's due, can give some pretty good laughs as you either steer clear from or purposely create a hideous abomination of a driver.
I'm sure you can immediately tell who this is.
Then you choose to either join a team or create your own and get to work. I went ahead and joined a team for my first season, then created my own team for the second season. And unfortunately, it's right here where we can immediately see how much of a copy-paste game this is to NASCAR Heat 5. The same agent with the same name saying the exact same thing at the start of a new season. But I'm going to save my thoughts on the presentation of this game for later. I want to talk more about the gameplay first. Gameplay-wise, NASCAR Rivals is actually very solid, aside from the super speedway tracks, which we'll get to in a second. Anything outside of the super speedway tracks, this is where Rivals shines. With the ping-pong issue that plagued the earlier Heat titles gone now, Rivals allows for close and intense racing. It allows for those close calls and those risky moments where you can race with multiple drivers wheel to wheel, making daring passes along with getting physical out on the track if you need to be. And for as much as it's memed on nowadays, the wide array of options that Rivals gives you does allow for a wider range of customization to tailor the racing experience to what you're specifically looking for. Focusing on the controls, I played Rivals with the Pro controller when the Switch was docked, and with the Joy-Cons attached to the Switch when in handheld mode. When playing with the Pro controller, it felt very natural to drive the car, and it didn't take long for me to get used to it. With the Joy-Cons, it did take a little longer to get used to the driving, and even when I got comfortable, it did still feel different from the Pro Controller, but not to any extreme extent. You can easily play this with the Joy-Cons in handheld mode when you're out and about somewhere and still have a good time. The AI when racing is very solid from what I've played as well, I'm happy to report. Neutral drivers will tend to stick to their own lines, they'll stay with their lines if they know they've got an advantageous position to force you to back off, and they race as any neutral driver would. Though they don't, and probably won't, be neutral in the long run, as there is an alliances and grudges system in this game. Or should I say, an ally and rival.
Making a mother of all omelets here, Jack. Can't spread over every egg.
Allies will still race you hard when necessary, but they'll be much more willing to give you more space and be much more eager to draft with you on tracks like the super speedways. Rivals are quicker to make blocks on you to make getting by them harder, and they won't be afraid to get physical with you if you attempt to pass them. Thankfully, if you're the kind of driver who likes to drive clean, such as myself, it's pretty easy to maintain those alliances with the other drivers. Even full-blown shunting an ally on accident at a track like Bristol or Martinsville will at worst knock your reputation with that driver down a bit, but that progress can easily be regained. This is an area where Rivals is actually better than games like Thunder 2004.
What?
In Thunder 2004, for example, it's very easy to make enemies out there on the track given how careful you have to drive around them otherwise. If you even so much as look at them funny, they'll at best not be an ally anymore, and at worst become a rival. In Rivals, the other drivers actually have some patience with you, and they may even give you chances to repair relationships a bit right after a race. On occasion, after a race, you are taken to the social media tab where the drivers type and at you like they never actually would on Twitter. Who wrote these cheesy tweets? You're given the choice to compliment or insult them as a response, though you don't even get to see your response, you just press X or Y and that's it, which can give a boost to either make them a friend or a rival. Drivers can compliment you on a nice race, show sympathy if you're off the mark for a race, or show their frustration if you clash with them on the track. Though, speaking of the tracks, let's focus back on the super speedways. Super speedway racing is very different when compared to the other kinds of racing out there. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of it here, but in order to do well at tracks like Daytona and Talladega, you have to work with other drivers and make sure you're in the draft in order to stay at competitive speeds, otherwise you'll fall behind. That's why super speedway racing can be so thrilling despite how boring it can look at a first glance. You have to make sure that any overtakes you go for will either succeed, or if it fails, you have to make sure that you can fall right back into the draft. If you go for an overtake, it fails, and then you can't get back into the draft, you'll be losing spots fast. That is why super speedway racing is so exciting. However, when taking into account things like practice and one-shot qualifying times at these tracks, Motorsport Games forgot to adjust the times to make it fair. In practice, you get a small cash bonus if you complete a lap in under a certain time. Problem is, you have to draft with another driver in order to be able to beat that time. Given that it's practice, it's tedious to set up and do, but you can draft with another driver and beat that time. In one-shot qualifying though, with there being no other drivers to draft with, you will place last every single time because the game is using times that can only be achieved if drivers draft with one another. In other words, if you were able to draft with another driver, you would be able to realistically make this time, or at least somewhere close to it. But because you can't draft with other drivers, there's no possible way that you'll even get close to that time. One-shot qualifying at super speedway tracks is busted, making each super speedway race essentially a last to first challenge. The actual racing itself can also be a bit busted at times. For instance, whichever lane you're not in on any given restart gets a huge speed boost at the start for no reason.
Green, green, green. Looking outside now. Outside by himself. Hard from the outside, outside. 2 laps left. Stay calm. Outside.
However, when you're not practicing, qualifying, or exiting a caution, that is when super speedway racing can be fun. But what that means is over 2/3 of super speedway racing in this game is either tedious, busted, or bullshit. And those are the kinds of traits that you do not want associated with your game in any way, shape, or form. Speaking of being busted, we're going to talk about the presentation now, because those little imperfections may not seem like much on the surface, but when taking a look at the big picture, those imperfections can really add up to having the overall experience, if not busted, then at least soured. For starters, why am I in my custom-made driver outfit instead of the team's outfit for when I'm racing with an already established team? Whoever was in charge of making sure that the driver number here was transparent must have used one of those transparent PNG images that aren't actually transparent. How have I already completed one season despite not having raced at all yet? In Rivals, you get to choose a short musical track that plays as a victory theme of sorts if you win a race. Sounds fair enough, right? I'm not sure who at Motorsport Games thinks DNFing a race is winning, but apparently your victory theme plays if you DNF a race.
All clear, nothing coming out back. All right.
For some reason, wherever you finish in a race, when you go to your calendar to look at the races you've already completed, it adds one, or subtracts a number in this case, whichever one you want to go with, to where you actually finished and defaults to negative first place if you DNF a race. Hey, look at that. I'm friends with the entire field, the exact opposite of the name of the game. Wait, how do I have a reputation of 41 if there are only 40 drivers on the field? I don't know where that extra +1 comes from. Maybe I get a reputation point dedicated to myself? Guys, look, I'm no longer majoring in computer science, but even I know that this cannot be difficult. To whoever programmed this part of the game, have you taken a coding fundamentals course? And before anyone goes, wait, you just said you abandoned majoring in computer science. Yeah, but I at least passed the coding fundamentals course before I made that realization and threw in the towel. Whoever programmed the game to show that I placed negative first or 0th place in a race, and for the game to say that I've already completed one season when I haven't even started yet, and for the game to add a mysterious reputation point that isn't explained anywhere, whoever that was either sleep deprived to hell and back, or this was their first time working with numbers and coding. How do you mess this up? There's a reason I called them out for who they are, incompetent, at the start of this video. Oh, but it does not stop there. Call me petty all you want for this one, but inconsistencies like this need to be pointed out. In Rivals, the challenge mode returns, where different drivers challenge you to complete different tasks, ranging from holding onto a lead, avoiding a wreck, all that stuff. Except, it's confusing at times as to who is challenging you. Looking at the very first challenge, number 269, it says that Chase Elliott is challenging us. Yet, in the challenge, we take control of Kyle Larson's number 5. I mean, I guess it makes sense for the adversary to be the one challenging us, though normally it's the person whose car we're taking control of for a challenge that is doing the challenging, but okay. Except wait a minute, when we take a look at the second challenge, Old School Bump and Run, Denny Hamlin is the one challenging us, and we take control of Hamlin's number 11 in the challenge. Challenge number 3, Cinderella Story. Christopher Bell is the one challenging us, but we take control of Eric Almirola's number 10. Also, basic motorsport mathematics smooth brain moment here in Motorsport Games, the challenge says we start with 1 second between us and Bell. This is not a second. Oh, but you want to know when the confusion gets really good? Challenge number 5, it's not over until the stripe. Kyle Larson is the one challenging us, but we take control of Alex Bowman's number 48, and the challenge has us facing off against Kyle Busch while Larson is further up ahead until he blows a tire in a scripted moment towards the end of the race. Busch is the one doing the challenging here since he's the one riding our ass for the whole thing, and we don't even see and pass Larson until the end. So why isn't Bowman doing the challenging if it's his car we're taking control of in the challenge? Or hell, if Kyle Busch is the one riding our ass for the whole thing, if you want to keep the opponent doing the challenging theme here in NASCAR Rivals, why not him? And even if the challenges made sense and kept the continuity each time, you want to know what you get as a reward for completing a challenge? A green checkmark that says you completed it. No new drivers, no new paint schemes, no new tracks, just a dinky little checkmark. Player progression, engaging the player with lots of rewards for, I don't know, playing the game? Psh, get that common sense out of here. We gotta get this thing out the door now. We'll add rewards back in for NASCAR 24. We ran out of f***ing ideas. Just get a move on. Oh my god, guys. Guys. Oh, but I'm not even done yet. When I win a race, why is my crew wearing all business casual outfits and not their pit crew gear? Or if the business casual outfits are here to stay, why is it just plain white and not at minimum in the team's colors with the primary sponsor logo on the front? Why is my driver and crew so silent when they're celebrating in victory lane? Why does the team momentum icon overlap with the NASCAR Rivals logo at the top left of the corner there? Why is the I in Rivals not capitalized? Why is the layout of telling the members of your own team what to do before each race the exact same as Heat 5? Yeah, the colors are different and the boxes are different dimensions and sizes, but it's the whole fresh coat of paint trying to hide the fact it's the same system but it looks different now thing going on here. Why is the name of the driver that you've replaced when you join a team still on the car? Why is there no pit crew?
It's gonna take like the whole race just to get up to 60 on the tire pressures. That's gonna be... Oh, that's gonna be hell. Oh, and it's at 21 seconds. I forgot our pit crew's awful. Wow, it just can't get any worse. It's like this game doesn't want me to have any kind of interesting material. Like I got nothing to talk about.
And before someone says something about how,
oh, it's on the Nintendo Switch, they probably couldn't add in a pit crew.
if a game like NASCAR Heat 2002 on the PlayStation 2 can add in a pit crew, I'm pretty sure Motorsport Games can add in a pit crew here. I don't think it's a matter of console specs being the reason why pit crews are or aren't added. Yeah, the Nintendo Switch isn't exactly a powerhouse, but again, if a PlayStation 2 game, which is significantly weaker in comparison, can add in a pit crew, I'm pretty damn sure that Motorsport Games could add in a pit crew on the Nintendo Switch game of NASCAR Heat Rivals. I think it's because those at Motorsport Games don't know how to optimize, let alone make a video game. And do you want to see the creme de la creme? The final nail in the coffin? The straw that broke the camel's back for me? When I began that second season where I started my own team, things were not off to the best of starts by the system being the exact same as NASCAR Heat 5, but honestly, that's to be expected with Motorsport Games at this point. Things were okay as I bought my first 2 cars, hired and trained my team, and got ready to race at Daytona. But as soon as I loaded up Daytona, something caught my eye. See if you can spot it. Why am I still driving the number 7 built car from Spire Motorsports from when I joined a team? If you go from joining a team to making your own, whatever car you drove when you joined a team is the same car that you drive as an owner driver. If this doesn't show how incompetent Motorsport Games is, I don't know what does. How do you screw something up so basic? How? This is the kind of thing that you mess up on if you're first learning coding, not if you hold the exclusive rights to the National Association of Stock Car Auto Racing. I doubt anyone from NASCAR will see this video, let alone watch it all the way through, but just on the very small chance that someone does, if you are in any position of power, please kick Motorsport Games to the curb already. These scam artists, these con men are ruining NASCAR gaming. Get rid of them. Hell, I can't believe I'm saying this. I would happily welcome back Technics at this point. Not EA, because EA may be better than Motorsport Games when it comes to the functionality of their copy-paste roster update sports games, but only just barely so. And yeah, Technics has some things to iron out, but I can at least play their games without developing an aneurysm because they at least got the fundamentals right. Well, maybe not for Ride to Hell Retribution, but my point still stands. On top of the game being essentially NASCAR Heat 5.5, all of those weird inconsistencies and basic mishaps makes NASCAR Rivals a really hard sell, even if you are someone who primarily plays on the Switch. Don't get me wrong, the core racing outside of the super speedway tracks is fun, and ultimately, that is what matters most when it comes to a racing game. The presentation can be sharp, sleek, clean, all of this and that, but if the core racing experience sucks, then it doesn't matter how good it looks. That would be a classic case of the shiny turd still being a turd. Even with Rivals playing good for the most part though, this game has basic errors that any experienced game developer should know how to avoid, or at the very least fix before release. Again, adding the +1 to where you finished a race on the calendar, playing your victory theme when you do the exact opposite of winning, not swapping out the driver name or adding your own name onto the car when you join or create a team respectively, things like that should be ironed out well before launch. To some, that won't bother them, and if that's the case for you, then maybe NASCAR Rivals is a game that you'll enjoy if you decide to get it. Just whatever you do, if you do decide to get it, please do not get it fully priced on the eShop. Just please get a pre-owned physical copy. Just please. But for others, like myself, those errors and inconsistencies add up to take away from the core experience given how basic, how fundamental even, these mistakes are. If NASCAR Rivals was a fan game made by a single person, then I would be a lot more forgiving given the circumstances. Motorsport Games, on the other hand, has... Wait, where are the credits in this game? Are there no credits? Yeah, unless there's some Konami code up, down, left, right, B, A, start, S combo cheat code that I need to put in to access the credits, there are no credits in this game. Even if there are credits and I missed them, it cannot be this difficult to find them. They cannot be this well hidden. If this isn't a sign that Motorsport Games knows that this is a copy-paste roster and car update of Heat 5, I don't know what else is. Those who worked on this game are so ashamed and know what this game truly is that they don't even want to be associated with it in any way, shape, or form. I would not be surprised if they omitted NASCAR Rivals on things like their resumes or on their LinkedIn profiles, if they're willing to hide their names from the game itself. Shoot, maybe it really was just one person making this game then, which if that was the case, then damn, dude, I am so sorry for being so hard on you. Blame Motorsport Games for their ambiguity, though. That's just my guess, though, since there appears to be no credits for me to look at so that I can either confirm or deny that. NASCAR Rivals is a textbook example of the more things change, the more they stay the same. Whether or not you buy this game is ultimately up to you, but I would strongly recommend that you stay away. Especially if you've already played games like Heat 5, but also even if you haven't, due to the inconsistencies and errors I listed earlier. I will admit, being able to play a true NASCAR game on the go, not something like NASCAR Heat Mobile, a true NASCAR game without the mobile gaming economy practices staining it, is pretty cool. However, the novelty of being able to play a proper NASCAR title, though calling this game a proper one is being generous at this point, quickly goes away once you boot the game up and see all of those inconsistencies and errors. NASCAR gaming clearly still has a long way to go before it comes even remotely close to the glory days of the early to mid 2000s. If that day comes, and not even until that day comes, at this point, if that day comes. In the meantime, I'll be returning to watching from the sidelines. Whether or not morbid curiosity will strike again for me, I don't know. I want to be able to play a top-tier NASCAR game again, but allow me to be blunt here. As long as Motorsport Games has the rights to NASCAR gaming, I don't think that top-tier game will be coming anytime soon.